Okay, good day everyone. We'll discuss now the introduction to income taxation. Of course, credits to the author of the book of income taxation, who is Rex B. Manggawan, CPA MBA. What we are going to learn in the income taxation discussion would be, of course, first, the concept of gross income. Next would be the types of income taxpayers. Next, another would be the general rules in income taxation. And for the last is the income tax situs. Okay? Rules of the income taxation. Or what is the concept of income? Take note, in National Internal Revenue Code, income is referred to us as a gross income. Okay? As gross income, of course. Gross income is defined as any inflow of wealth to the taxpayer, whatever source that increases net worth. Okay? So we all know how to compute now for the taxable income. First, gross income less the deductions and personal exemptions allowable by law. Okay, take note of that. Those exemptions, of course, have been approved and have become a law, legislated, of course, by the Congress and the Senate. Okay, and signed by the President of the Republic of the Philippines. Next is on the concept of income regarded as the best measure of taxpayers' ability to pay tax and an excellent object of taxation. So, with regards to enacting a law or a tax law, of course, it have been in a deliberation process. Of course, binabasehan lahat ng Congress, of course, through deliberation, what would be the best measure, okay, or who would be or which would be the object of such taxation. Okay, next, of course, there are two elements of gross income. First element would be the return on capital. So we are already familiar with that. Okay, what is return on capital? Of course, selling price as the total return less for the cost. Okay, take note, cost is a return of capital equals gross income, which is, of course, the return on capital. Okay, or the profit, of course. So we have a differentiation of the return of capital versus return on capital. So take note, one word only. Return of capital, of course, it only maintains net worth, or of course we all know the equity section of the financial statements. Versus return on capital, it increases net worth, of course, through profit. Another would be the return of capital is not subject to income tax as it is an equity, of course, and return on capital, of course, that is a subject to income tax due to its proprietary purpose. Okay, capital items deemed with infinite value or return of. Okay, so they are the so-called, of course, the return of capital. These items first would be the value of life. Okay, just like for example mga insurance, of course, insurance or the proceeds of life insurance policies paid to the heirs of beneficiaries upon death of the insured, take note, are exempt from income tax. Okay, of course, general class, pag once na life insurance policy sa pag-uusapan, of course, that is an exempt from income tax. Okay, so all of the proceeds from the life insurance policy, okay, paid to the heirs upon death of the insured person. Okay, another exempt from income tax would be the proceeds of a life insurance contract collected by an employer as a beneficiary from life insurance of an officer or any person directly interested with his trade are exempt from income tax. Okay, basta general yun na rule, basta proceeds of life insurance, they are all exempt from income tax. Okay? But again, there will be an exemption. Okay? For them to be subjected to income tax, there must be an excess amount received over premiums paid by the insured upon surrender. If you are familiar to the cash surrender value in accounting, of course, or maturity of the policy. Minsan, kasi gini mo bayad og mga premiums on your insurance. Siyempre, naglampas na ka. Okay? For the total premiums you must pay for a certain benefit you must receive. So, minsan magsobra. Okay? So, if you are familiar with the St. Peter, minsan 5 years bayaran na nimo. Example, 1,000 per month bayaran nimo sa St. Peter but only for 5 years. So, again, if ever maabot na ka, wala pa nimo na siya nagamit, of course, there is a so-called cash surrender value. That is already the excess amount. Okay? So, basta once maka-perfect na sa 5 years, fix na to imo ma-receive na benefits from the St. Peter. Okay? But, of course, in excess with that, okay? So, may excess na siya. Again, may mga ihatag na din sa imo as another benefit, mintras buhi pa ka from your life insurance plans. But again, any excess on that, okay? The amount received, okay? Or what we call that, the cash surrender value is already subject to income tax. Of course, any gain realized by the insured from the assignment or sale of his insurance policy. Of course, pag once na gi-assign niya or gibaligya niya yung insurance policy, gipaulian sa Bisaya pa, of course, any gain realized by the insured person, it is subject to income tax. And of course, the interest income from the unpaid balance of the proceeds of the policy. Of course, pag may mga interest income involved, okay, from the unpaid balance of the proceeds of the insurance, of course, subject to income tax na siya. Only those the principal is exempt from income tax. Okay? And next would be the any excess of the proceeds received over the acquisition cost and premium payments by an assignee of a life insurance policy. Of course, katupong ganina, itong sa gain na itong pag-usapan, of course, pag ikaw ang naka-gain o ikaw ang as an insured or assignor na itong ginatawag. But in this last statement, of course, what if pag ikaw ang assignee? Ikaw ang nag-receive sa life insurance, of course, ang imuhang gibayran, mauni sa imong gibayran, but the premium payments na imuhang na-receive, okay, or premiums na imuhang gipalit masobra pa sa imuhang gipagawas na kwarta or gibayad sa assignor, of course, in excess with that, of course, that would be also a part gain on the part of the assignee that is subject to income tax. Okay? Next capital item would be the value of health. Okay? Any compensation in consideration for the loss of health, such as compensation for personal injuries or of course mga torture or tortuous acts, is exempted also from income tax. So minsan pag naatay mga nakaagit ang mga physical injuries, okay, sa mga bugbugan, okay, so that is not subject for income tax. Okay, that is already for the in consideration or baga in reward of the loss, of course, on the injury, okay, received by the injured person. Next, value of human reputation. It cannot be measured financially, of course, but the human reputation, of course, we cannot measure that financially. But any indemnity received as compensation for its impairment, of course, natay mga ma-receive ng mga negative na mga effects or of course with regards to the lawsuits, of course, is exempt from income tax. Example, of course, the moral damages received from oral defamation or slander, alienation or affection and or breach of promise to marry. Of course, pati na ang promise to marry, sir. Yes, there is so many events na once na na-prepare na ang kasal and then here it comes, example, it's either the bride or the groom did not attend to a certain wedding, of course, but of course the other party, of course, but if ang groom ang wala nag-attend, of course the other party which is the bride soon to be unta, of course magkaroon siya mga anxieties, depressions, of course there would be a mental, physical, emotional effects which is negative, of course, on the part may mga pamilya pa mapaulawan. So all in all, she or he can sue, of course, for the plaintiff, and then for the aggrieved party, which is the complainant, of course, um, you can, okay, you can ask for damages for that. Okay, so mga anxiety, di ka tulog na paulawan, halos di na kamugawasan yung balay, so you can sue the plaintiff, of course, or the person, okay, um, give you, okay, a negative emotional distress, of course, you can receive that, and the amount received as compensation for all of that damages, especially for that moral damages, is not subject to income tax or exempt from income tax. Okay, so there would be also a recovery of lost capital versus recovery of lost profits. Okay, in case of there is a recovery of lost capital, it results a decrease in net worth, but it in only maintains net worth. But again, it is not taxable. Basta related halo sa capital class, return of capital, there is no tax with that. Okay? But if there is a recovery of lost profits, do not decrease net worth. Okay? So, or that it does not decrease net worth. Of course, net worth is real account, okay, but on the temporary account, which is the profit or loss, of course, may times na makakabawi ka, okay, so may times na nakakabawi ka, and independent si profit, because di ba sa accounting i-close na nato siya before nato siya masulod sa equity as a real account. But again, before pa siya masulod, if ever you have a loss or recovery also, therefore that is already taxable. Just like for example, the proceeds of crop or livestock insurance. Okay? So example, ang inyong mga palayan nagkaroon og mga dilubyo, of course, if ever na may mga insurance ka, na insured nimo siya, and then gibayaran ka, it's just like um, even though loss siya, okay, example sir, ibaligya nung tanako pero naulanan manggod, so wala na halin, pero nabayaran ka through insurance, again, already taxable. It is considered as deemed sales. Tinatawag deemed sales. So mura na siyang nabaligya. Kay ulan man sa dili, makadawat man gyapon kay ma-receive man gyapon nimo tong certain amount of money. Also, it's just like guarantee payments. Of course, just like for example, wala ka gibayaran sa nangutang sa imuha, okay? But again, may mga interest pa to, so wala ka na bayaran. But again, may nagbayad, other party. Example, yung igsuon sa nangutang sa imuha. If ever may mga interest, gibayaran po niya, that interest income is subject to tax na. Sir, giuli naman, no. It doesn't matter na kung kinsa nagbayad. The important matter here would be amount received. Sobra na po to, interest income. Of course, dapat subject to income tax or indemnity received from patent infringement suit. Okay? So may gikaso ka, okay? So may gikaso ka for a damages. Example, kung naka-enter ka og mga patent suits or mga paglabag sa license, of course, copyrights. So isa pud na sila, indemnity or compensation for that certain infringement suit na naka-recover ka, of course, that is already taxable. Okay? So next element, okay, would be the realized benefit. That is the second element of gross income, the realized benefit. Okay? So we must focus on the term realized. Any unrealized benefit, of course, that is not taxable. But when we say realized, okay, it means earned. Okay? And benefit also means any form of advantages or advantage by the taxpayer, and there is benefit if there is an increase in net worth. So, medyo literal lamang kay siya. Dali lang siya subton. Okay? Types of transaction na, of course, not benefits and also not taxable. The receipt of a loan. Nagpautang ka, gibayaran ka through principal, wala man ka naka-benefit. Okay? So, no gain, no loss. So, wala kay tax. Okay? And next, discovery of lost properties. Of course, pag may mga nawala sa inyo, of course, wala na kayo naka-benefit, taxan ka pa. So, it is not practical on your side. Next is the receipt of money or property to be held in trust for or to be remitted to another person. So just like for example, sinaligan lang ka, okay, ito kadawat ka kwarta, pero example, you have received 100,000 but you are only requested by that certain person, you are being held as a trustee, okay? So you must, okay, the request of that certain person or the trustor, of course, you must deliver that certain money, example 100,000, you must deliver that certain money to the specified person, okay, or specified by the trustor. So in that case, wala man ka naka-gain, wala man po ka naka-benefit, it is not taxable, okay. But of course, the definition for the realized benefits, medyo literal lang man siya, dali lang siya, subton. But again, pag benefits na siya tinatawag, there is a benefits na of course may mga taxation, may taxability, may pera po siya wala. Not subject to income tax. Okay? Not all benefits are subject to income tax also. Again, what are those benefits that subject to income tax? Of course, if there is a unilateral transfers. Okay, we are talking about the income tax here. There are so many taxes in the Philippines, but specific lang ta income tax. If there is an income. Okay? In unilateral transfers, gratuitous transactions. So, no condition. I mean, wala, there is a um, gratuitous intent on the part of of course, the certain person or the owner. Okay? Ihatag sa imuha willingly. Wala siya napasing, wala siya ningil, wala siya kabayaran. So, ihatag niya lang sa imuha voluntarily. Pwede. Of course, unilateral transfers, of course, that is succession. Okay? On the succession, of course, we can say the estate tax, of course. Of course. But again, may tax siya, pero ang estate ang tax, not an income tax. Okay? And another is the donation. Okay? Sir, income tax? No, there is no income tax there, but there is a donor's tax. Okay? Estate tax, donor's tax, of course, sa inyo na ng higher account, higher taxation na po ninyo or next sem ninyo na makuha. Again, those transactions are subject to transfer tax, which will be discussed in your next subject of tax. Okay? But not in tax 101. Okay? So, transfer taxes na sila. Okay? So, next, some benefits also that subject to income tax, bilateral. So, may arm's length transactions na ginatawag ta. Okay? Which is the common is the sale and the barter. Okay? Sale transaction and barter transaction. Okay? So, ablo naman sila mo sa sale. There, you have given as you have received a certain money and you have given a certain item, or of course it's either goods or service. And barter, of course, barter, there's no money involved, but again, may certain value ang inyong gihatag sa isa't isa, and there is also a bilateral transfer or an arm's length transaction, onerous transaction ang tawag sa ilaha. Okay? And that is already subject to income tax. Any excess, okay, of what you have given, that is already subject to income tax. Okay? Again, may mga mixed benefits punta na ginatawag. It's either subject or not to, or not in income tax, or ginatawag na to complex transactions. Illustration, example, natay tawag na to natay baligya. Okay? Natay baligya na isa ka personal property, just like for example a car. Okay? So when we say we want to sell a car, certain car, of course, mamahalin siya, umot isipon, example, that would cost a 1 million pesos car. Okay? But you have sell it for your selling price. You have sell it at 500,000. Okay? And again, your cost, example, napalit mo na siya dati, 300,000 lang. Okay? But here it comes na kay selling price, 500,000 is because, just like for example, na mo siyang i-upgrade. But in the market, for that certain upgraded car, nakita nila, so may fair value na tayo ginapakita, na tayo mga market value. Of course, what if sa market ni mo na siya ibaligya, dili siya into direct buyer lang, o murag easy lang ang pagbaligya. Of course, makita sila yung nga certain murag halos kamuka, or of course, that certain upgraded na item or car, personal property, fair value ang tawag na to ana. But of course, ibaligya lang mo siya mas barato. Okay, ibaligya mo siya 500,000, but the fair value is 1 million, but you have the capital only of 300,000 pesos. So, mix siya, okay, na ginatawag na benefit. Of course, naka-benefit ka na as ikaw, naka-receive ka item, ibaligya lang sa mo 500,000, But 1 million man dapat ang ipresyo kay mao na siyang fair value sa market. The 500,000 difference of the fair value and the selling price is subject to transfer tax or donor's tax. Murag na siya gi-donate sa imo na 500,000 pesos. And again, for the selling price less cost, pero naman ta, of course, the gross income is subject to income tax, okay, which is 200,000 in our example. Okay, 500,000 less the cost of 300,000 pesos. So, ingana lang siya. Okay? So, later on, may mga amount na involved, may mga computation na dito na mas masabtan. But again, in fair value na may subject to transfer tax later on sa mga mixed transactions just like this, you can encounter that in the transfer tax na topic or subject ninyo. So, sa tax 102 ba tawag ninyo na o 201. So, uh, sa next subject na ginin nyo na siya ma-discuss. So, mas masabtan nyo na dito na transaction. Okay? Next, there is a benefits in the absence of transfers. These are benefits which has an increase in the wealth of the taxpayer in the form of appreciation, okay, or increase in value of his properties or decrease in the value of obligations in the absence of a sale or barter. Of course, it is not subject to income tax, but these are also referred to as an unrealized gains or holding gains. As what I've said, realized benefits ang ato ang theory dire sa income tax. But again, if there is any transaction that is unrealized, okay, because they have not yet materialized in an exchange transaction, of course, that is not subject to income tax. Of course, there are examples here. Increase in value of investments in equity or debt securities. Of course, itong ma-encounter na ito class, madungganan nyo ng mga terms. Just like for example, unrealized gain on trading securities. Okay? So unrealized gain on marketable securities, so through profit or loss, any terms that like that, just like that, of course, that is not a realized benefit, and that thus it is not subject to income tax. Okay? Increase in value of real properties, okay, encounter ninyo nga revaluation surplus, okay? So increase in value of foreign currencies, mga unrealized foreign exchange gain, unrealized gain on foreign exchange. So any of that, mintras wala pa nyo siya napakompensate class or wala pa siya manabayaran or wala pa siya nakaagi into an exchange transaction, of course, all of them is not subject to income tax. Hanging pa ang ihang gain or loss. Yung benefit in short. Okay? So, continue on reading on that. So, familiarize and then focus on what the concept, okay, of the realized benefit theory. Okay? Next, the basis of exemption of unrealized income. Okay? As the taxpayer can pay the respective taxes when their income materializes in an exchange transaction, since tax is generally payable in money. Yes, that is true. Makabayad man jud kag tax kung may kwarta ka. Okay, generally. However, it does not limit to the so-called money or cash. Income received in non-cash considerations is also taxable at fair value of the property received. Because exempting income realized in non-cash considerations would open a wide avenue for tax evasion. Yes, pwede siya ma-abuse in short. Okay? So, dili na lang nila ipagawas na cash ang gibayad. Ang entry lang nila is land. Ang entry is building. So, ang entry, instead na debit, cash, gigamit is debit, car, credit, sales. So, pwede nilang gawin. If ever i-exempt tanan mga non-cash considerations or non-cash na mga ginabayad. Okay? So, it does not limit on the cash. Kay kung nga na lang, hulaton lang sa magka-entry kag debit na cash. So, if that would be the basis, magkakaproblema ang ato ang government. Okay? Of course, there is also mode of receipt or realization benefits. First, the actual receipt. So, kabalo naman siguro ta, actual receipt, of course, actual physical taking of the income. Okay? Actual na na-receive ang kwarta, actual na na-receive ang property. Constructive receipt, no actual physical taking of the income, but the taxpayer is effectively benefited. So, na siya karon, uso na karon mga online banking na gani generally. So, there's no need na. But again, if you are already benefited and it is already realized, of course, that is subject to income tax. Balik lang gyapon ka sa realized benefit concept. Okay, the last would be the last element of gross income is not exempted by law, contract, or treaty. Okay? The item of gross income is not exempted by the Constitution, law, contracts, or treaties from taxation. Of course, another element of gross income is not only limited to the return on capital and on the realized benefit, but again, of course, kung what has been said in the Constitution or in the law, in the contracts or treaties, mga foreign treaties na to, na dili siya exempt sa taxation, of course, subject to income tax na siya. But again, in the Constitution, in the law, the contracts, and other treaties from taxation, of course, may mga gi-specify po sila na items na exempted from taxation or income taxation. Of course, income of qualified employee, trust fund. Okay? And again, the revenues of non-profit, non-stock educational institutions. Naman na sa tuwang constitutional limitations, right? So, SSS, GSIS, pag-ibig or PhilHealth benefits, okay? Mga minimum wage of the minimum wage earners and for the qualified senior citizens. Of course, the regular income. So, BMBE law, BMBE, granted by the DTI if you want to apply for that. So, exempted na sila. So, again, it is stated in the law or constitution, contracts, or treaties from taxation. And of course, income of foreign governments and foreign government-owned and controlled corporations. So, pag once na ma-add to sila dire, nasa sila mga transaction, of course, pag mga income sila, but for their foreign government transactions, foreign government-owned, controlled corporations, already exempted by the law from income taxation. Okay? Income of international mission and organizations with income tax immunity. Just like for example, mga embassy. Okay? So, may mga nga mga instance. Okay? Next, there are two types of income taxpayers. Of course, individuals and corporations. But under individuals, these are divided into two or three, I mean. The citizen, the alien, and ang alien class, it refers to the foreigners. Okay? Taxable estates and trusts. Okay? Later, maano na sila, may isa-isa na sila. And for the other type of income taxpayer, corporations. Okay? So, the domestic, of course, ang ato ang sariling korporasyon. Diri siya gi-build, diri siya na anak, diri siya na articles, okay? The Corporation Code of the Philippines iyang gigamit. Okay? So, next for the foreign corporations, okay? So, corporations built abroad or in the foreign country again, but operated or operating here in the Philippines. Okay? So now, what is a citizen on what is a citizen? Okay? Individual income taxpayers. Citizens, you are being called a citizen class of the Philippines if you are at the time of adoption of the Constitution, you are a citizen of the Philippines at the time of adoption of the Constitution on February 2, 1987. So, tanan-tanan yung mga citizens na in the Philippines na during February 2, 1987 up to the present is already the citizen of the Philippines. So, that time, granted na siya. Okay? And those whose fathers or mothers are citizens of the Philippines. Of course, pag citizen na yung mama, papa, nag-anak ka nila, you are already citizen of the Philippines. And those born before January 17, 1973 of Filipino mothers who elected Filipino citizenship upon reaching the age of majority. So, sa panahon niya na class, patana anak, again, in that time, may mga law granting, okay, the newly born child, of course, may karapatan or may option, may election sa part ni mother na if ever na gusto niya na that time na yung anak would become a citizen of the Philippines. Okay? So, minsan, sir, what if ang giano man diya is upon reaching the age of majority, of course, that time, wala pa kayo tayo nga master na to ang mga ingana nga panahon. Pero, upon reaching, they have the election now pag once na mag-age of majority na, so what is the majority age? Takabalo, kung sa'yo naka-state sa batas niya na. But again, sa tuwa generally, mga 18 years old siguro or 21 years old, of course, na siya right to elect for his or her citizenship. Okay? So, what if ipilit niya Philippines? Of course, naano na sa iya ha. And those who are naturalized in accordance with the law, of course, itong mga napaka-convert, may mga until now na mangyapon na siya class all over the world grant mangyapon na siya. So isurrender nimo ang imuhang sarili as a citizen of the Philippines. You are already naturalized citizen or naturalized Filipino. So makita ninyo na may mga ano kung nagatan-aw mo mga basketball, mga PBA, so may mga foreigners like for example mga Black Americans. So naging Pinoy na sila, nakadula na sila dito sa Gilas, Pilipinas, mga Black Americans, okay? Halos di kayo magtagalog but they are already naturalized citizen of the Philippines. So napanaturalize na sila. Filipino na sila in their passports also, in their records, Filipino na sila. Okay? Next, type of income taxpayer under the individuals. Of course, alien. You are called an alien, not literal alien klasa na medyo sagwa o itsura, but again, alien na foreigner or foreign. Those who is residing in the Philippines but not a resident of the said country. So they are called resident alien. Nagapuyo sa Pilipinas but not a citizen. Okay? So, next, those who is not residing and also not a citizen. Okay? So, dili ka, I think murag mali ako ang statement rin class, but again, kindly correct me if I'm wrong lang, but not a citizen of the said country siguro. Okay? So, those who is residing in the Philippines under the resident alien. So, foreigner ka, in short, you are not a resident of the said country, which is the Philippines, but you are residing here. Nagapuyo ka diri. So, resident alien ang tawag sa mua. Again, there is also a non-resident alien, mga bakasyonista generally. Those who is not residing and also not a citizen of the Philippines. Okay? So, next, there is also a general classification rule for individuals. For the first would be the intention, okay, of the taxpayer or of the person or individual. The taxpayer, just in case na gusto gid niya or naagid siya or citizen na siya, so there is an intention, the taxpayer shall submit to the Commissioner of Internal Revenue of the BIR the documentary proofs such as mga visa, work contracts, mga passports pa na, and other documents indicating such intention. Okay? If you want to be a taxpayer of the Philippines. So, next, the length of stay for the non-resident citizen. A citizen staying abroad for of at least 183 days. Okay? So, citizen siya sa Pilipinas. You are a Filipino citizen. It's like mga OFWs na to class. They are so-called the non-resident citizen na. Sobra naman 183 days. Okay? Next would be the resident alien. Okay? Matawag kag resident alien here in the Philippines if that certain person or foreigner who stayed in the Philippines for more than 1 year as of the end of the taxable year. Example, 2020, taxable year 2020. Of course, pag more than 1 year na day ka, so it means mga last year ka pa rin nagpuyo, you are being called as a resident alien. So, sir, anong ingani man sir ng ilang classification? How is it important? That is, it is important class for us to know kay may mga taxation, mga tax rates mong good na special tax rates para sa ilaha na, especially katong mga dili resident, dili citizen. Kita resident citizen, fixed na ato generally. Pero sila, may mga variable na sila ng mga tax rates just because iba-iba ang classification sa ilaha. So, for the fairness, di ba naman tayo term na equality. Okay, proportional in character, so may mga equity, equality in applying the taxation in the Philippines. For those, of course, on the individuals or the taxpayers so-called. Okay, next, non-resident alien engaged in trade or business. So, those foreigner or alien who is staying in the Philippines for not more than 1 year but more than 180 days. Non-resident alien ka na. But you are already called as engaged in trade or business. Or we are may mga acronym na class which is NRA ETB. NRA ETB. Okay? Non-resident alien engaged in trade or business. Okay? But of course, there is also a contrary with that, the NRA NETB, okay, which is non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business. Who are they? Of course, they are the alien or foreigner or foreigners who stayed in the Philippines for not more than 180 days. Take note, pag 180 days ang imuhang benchmark pag foreigner. Pag Pinoy, 183 days. So, di ba, may 3 days pa. Sir, anong diferensya pa man? Anak lang din siguro ang balaod, may 3 days pa na ito ginatawag nga. Ano, pag Pinoy ka, maggawas ka sa ibang bansa, dapat ato kung 100 after 180 days pwede na ka non-resident citizen na ka, so mag-iba na imuhang tax rate anak class, mag-iba na ang imuhang magiging treatment sa imuhang mga income, magkakaroon ng mga anxieties anak, magkakaroon na og mga pagbabago. So mas kay siguro maas lang gid siguro gamay ang Pilipinas, medyo bright ang mga nagimo sa batas, ayaw gamitan 180 days, mga ipatahangyo lang ta bisag 3 days man lang. Okay? So, basi tayo makabalik pa dahil siya diri sa Pilipinas. So, buo pa ito makuha siya. Resident citizen pa siya. Okay? So, uh, pag once na, ano lang, tawag na to ani, dili pa siya, yung sa full class, sir, what if less than 183 days? 180 days siya. 180 days, so ano pa siya? Resident citizen pa siya sa Pilipinas. So, buo pa ang ato ang makuha siya ng income and, of course, ang tax rate ato, ang Philippines tax rate ato para sa buong income ako ang makuha sa yaha. But again, pag once 100, another 3 days, na extend pa siya another 3 days, of course, wala na tayo may non-resident citizen na siya. Pero pag foreigner ang magtungtong dito sa Pilipinas, dili 183 days. So, medyo sayo-sayo. Pag abot 180 days, of course, NRA, NETB ka na. Okay? NRA, NE, not traded or not engaged in trade or business. So, medyo sayo-sayo, makakolekta na taog tax sa iyaha. Okay? But again, if more than 180 days na yun siya, so it means non-resident alien siya, pero wala pa siya kabot og 1 year, di pa siya pwede matawag nga resident. Okay? So, ano lang ang level of understanding na to para sa non-resident, for the resident or the citizen or the resident alien or NRA, ETB, and NRA, NETB. Okay? So, humana ta sa resident citizen, walay problema. Resident citizen, diri ka gapuyo, diri pud ka gapanganak or diri mo ang citizenship. So, may apat lang na iba sa iyaha. Okay? Next, taxable estates and trusts. Of course, when we say estate class, estate, may iha, refers to the properties, rights, and obligations of a deceased person, not extinguished by his death. So, minsan, kung may mamatay ang mga mana-mana, itong tinatawag class mana, okay, mga properties left by the deceased person or individual. So, pag mamatay, isa po, isang mayamang tao, mamamatay, so may mga nabili na siya ng mga properties. Okay? So, they are called estate. So, kung mag-compute for the estate tax, okay, by the next subject ninyo na siya, pero tagaan mo overview, estate tax, ang may tax, dili katong patay na gud to. So, ang may tax is ang imuhang property, ang rights and obligations, ang imuhang estate, ang naay tax. Okay? So, mao na siya gitawag nga estate tax. Okay? Kuhaan pa to siya tax before ma-distribute sa mga heirs or sa imuhang mga tagapagmana. Okay? So, mga sa ubahin si government. Okay? Before ma-transfer. So, mao na siya gitawag nga transfer tax, and number one example is estate tax. Iba po itong donor's tax. Donor's tax, buhi ang nag-donate or buhi pa ka. The estate tax, patay na ang tag-iya. Okay? Wala na ilang kaibahan. Next, for the trust, of course, trust is an arrangement whereby one person, trustor, transfers property to another person, which is a beneficiary, but which will be held under the management of a third party. So, siyempre, na may time class na kaning mga grantor, mga willing no sila manghatag pero di sila gusto stress. Yes, like for example, yung mga taxes pa di na, napay mga contracts, napay mga papeles na mga pang-asikasuhon before ma-receive sa iyahang beneficiary or another person. So if that would be the case, na yung mga expert na class na ginatawag na itong trustee or fiduciary. Fiduciary, of course, that is for the concept of the confidence. Okay, you have a confidence na saligan siya. Okay? So that is a so-called trustee. So usually ang mga trusteean na ganyan class, mga trusteean mga fiduciary, mga attorneys, mga legal of course mga persons, mga legal authorities kay sila mismo kabalo sila unsay balaod, mga papeles, mga law, mga sa pabadiya may mga notaryal pa na sila diya. So generally mga anak sila mga abogado. So makita mo mga palabas minsan attorney ikaw na magbasa ng aking last will and testament. So mo to sa ginatawag nga trustee. Okay? So mo na sila. Trust is the arrangement. Of course, trustor, here it comes the trust, katong mga arrangement nila, and then the trustee. And then trustee, give it to the beneficiary. Okay? So paano siya nahatag sa beneficiary? Through trust. Okay? So ana lang. Next, the taxability of estates and trusts. Of course, sa estate class, taxable sa income of the properties left by the decedent under judicial settlement. So, may mga last testaments. So, judicial siya. May mga court hearings. So, any income of the properties, of course, left by the decedent, not the property itself, but mga income pa niya, of course, that is subject to income tax. Magiging non-taxable sa class and income of the properties left by the decedent under extrajudicial settlement. Okay? Naging taxable lang siya on uh, the heirs na. Kasi heirs naman ang naka-income. Okay? Si heirs na ang naka-receive. So may income involved dito. Si heirs na, dili na ang estate ang magiging taxable. Take note ang estate ato pag-usapan diri, the property itself. Magiging taxable lang ang property, ang income ni property, ang income ni estate kung giagi og judicial settlement. But magiging non-taxable siya pag giagi extrajudicial settlement. Okay, wala giagi mga court of hearings, but again, gidiretso na og mana. Kumbaga, imo na, ano kaingon, okay, mo na, patay na siya, nala siya ginan na tao, imo na daw na, gipanguha na lang nila ang mga gamit, ang mga kwarta sa bangko, just like example. So, any income did that, ang mga heirs na, ang mga tagapagmana, sila na ang doon sa government for paying income tax. Not the estate itself na. Dili na ang property. Wala naman, nabahin-bahin na ganyan nila, sila na nabahin-bahin. So, that would be the case now. Ang ilang kaibahan. Okay, para the taxability of the estates and estates. Of course, on the other hand, of course, the trust magiging taxable lang sa if the income of the property held in trust. Okay, take note ha. If the income of the trust, okay, on that certain property held in trust or held by the trustee, and if the designation by the grantor or the trustor to the trust is irrevocable. So pag wala sa trust, irrevocable na siya, taxable sa any income held by the, example, may mga property, just like for example, mga land, mga nag-appreciate generally, okay, may mga income or property na ginaparentahan, any income with that, of course, basta irrevocable lang, that is taxable. Irrevocable ang ilahang, kumbaga, sinabutan, arrangement of the trustor and the trustee. Okay, any income of that certain property, yung nga renta, ginaparentahan pa di ay, ni trustor tong property before ihatag. So, nagipaheld pa kay ulaton pa mag 18 years old ang beneficiary. Example, may mga ulaton na makapasal sa CPA board bago ihatag. So, that certain trustee, ginagunitan pa na niya nga property, napasayang pamamahala. Again, if ever may mga income na generate for that certain property held by the trustee, that is subject to income tax, especially pag irrevocable, walang atrasan na nga kontrata or sinabutan or arrangement. Okay? And magiging non-taxable lang ang income of that certain property held by the trust if the designation by the grantor to the trust is revocable. Okay? So pwede niya bawion ang trust. Pwede ako na lang muhatag. So wala, for example, wala yung mga pinirmahan. So revocable siya. So pwede siya mag-atras. Okay? For that certain trustee, nagadugay, murag duwadaan na kung salig sa imuha. Nga na, just for example lang. So if that would be the case, again, kwaon. Okay? Anytime pwede niya makuha. So magiging taxable siya, of course, at to the extent of the grantor. Take note, buhi pa ang grantor. So si grantor ang taksan. Okay? For any income of that certain property held by the trustee. Okay? So note, sir, what if silent ang problem, silent ang ito ang situation? Again, when the trust agreement is silent as to the revocability of the trust is presumed to be revocable. So in short, it is not the trust or the property should be tax. Dapat ang grantor or ang trustor ang mataksan. Okay? If wala gisaba, ang trust ba is revocable or irrevocable. Take note, if the problem is silent, it is presumed to be revocable. So, siyempre, pag walay sinabutan, kumbaga, namin sinabutan, wala di sinabutan, o revocable automatic. Okay? So, mo lang na. Next, for the another type of income taxpayer class, okay? So, when we say another income taxpayer, of course, when we say corporation, so medyo dali na lang kayo sa ito ang part. Ato ang naging isang part sa ito ang studies na to, sa ito ang career, sa ito ang profession, ang term na corporation. Okay? Common na kayo na. Of course, corporate income taxpayers. Okay? There are 5 classifications of corporate income taxpayers or corporations here in the Philippines. Of course, domestic corporations, of course, corporation organized in accordance with the Philippine laws. Diri siya gibuild, diri siya gianak, diri siya gikuhaan og articles of incorporation. Okay? Through our tinatawag na ito ng mga Securities and Exchange Commission, Cooperative Development Authorities, Board of Investments, o dagdagan pa na sila. Okay? Next would be the foreign corporations. Who are they? Of course, the corporation and organized, ang ilahang articles is foreign ang gigamit, not on Philippine laws. Okay? On the foreign law. Next would be the resident foreign corporation. Foreign corporation which operates and conducts business. Diyan, mari resident, di ba, wala may sariling personality ang resident. I mean, natural personality, of course, wala man yun. Charity ka lang sa papel lang ang iyang personality. But again, once mag-operate siya here in the Philippines, example, may mga branches siya. Okay? Sana siya yung mga branch, sana siya yung mga opisina dire. Okay? So, of course, that is already a resident foreign corporation na. So, there are so many examples here ng mga resident foreign corporation. So, daga na mo nakita. Mga, just an example, mga McDonald's ata. Okay, McDonald's na branch lang ang Philippines ata. May mga bagod. Siyempre, McDonald's ang main nasa ibang bansa. Mga Procter & Gamble. May Procter & Gamble Philippines. But again, that is only a branch. Okay? So, federally, naamang gina sa ibang bansa ang mga main offices ana o mga main corporations ana. Okay? So next, the non-resident foreign corporation. Okay, foreign corporation which does not operate and conduct business in the Philippines. Of course, wala tayo labot sila generally. Okay, mga bakasyonista sila, may mga representative sila gidala dire, so but it doesn't matter na non-resident foreign na. Okay? So next, special corporations, domestic or foreign corporations which are subject to special tax rules or preferential tax rates. So may mga special corporations wala class ka, may mga conduction at sila dire nga mga maka-income sila dire. So may mga foreign transactions sila even though bisan pag domestic of course, but they are subject to later on mabalaan ninyo unsa na sila mga preferential tax rates. Subject to special rules lang sila. Okay? There are also the other corporate taxpayers which is of course the partnership. Of course, basic lang po kayo, partnership and corporation, parehas na sila generally. Types of partnership is of course the general professional partnership. More on ano lang, wala service lang na generally ilahang offer, of course, and business partnership. Okay? Business partnership, trading, merchandising, manufacturing, basta may mga partnership na mga related sa commercial business. Of course, general professional partnership class, upon the taxability of the entity, of course, under the entity, exempt ang general professional partnership. As a partnership itself, wala sila tax. But taxable sila in terms of the sharing of profits to the partners. So may mga bawasan or may mga computation of income tax in sharing of profits. The same with the business partnership. But again, ang partnership, kuhaan pa siya tax as a partnership, of course, the sales, gross of cost of sales, less of cost of sales, gross income, less mga allowable deductions, then taxable income 10 times 30%. Same with the corporate tax rate. Okay? So, kumputa na siya tax, and then may mga net income after tax, and then distribute to the profits, distribute to the partners, na anak po yung tax. Sir, double taxation? Yes, but it is allowed. Again, double taxation? Yes, but it is allowed. Take note, gina-allow, wala problema ang double taxation. It is not, tawag ato illegal on the part of the system or the tax law on the what has been the tax law says. but dili siya pwede katong abusive. It is not abusive, of course. Okay? Na double taxation. Mga allowable double taxation na sila ang ginatawag. Of course, iba na gud ang iyang nature. First nature niya is as a business, katong exchange transactions. Pag-abot sa share of profits, of course, benefit, realized benefit on the part of the partner. Di ba? Purag ang dating class, wala man kay gihimo pero nakadawat kang kwarta. Gi-assume na sa government na wala man kay gihimo pero gihigda lang ka, but you have an income or tawag na to passive income. Okay, passive, murag income during sleep. Okay? So, nagulat lang ka, oy, ng partner man day ko diha, so may dawatonon ko. So, that's the time, taksan ka. Okay? So, that's it for the partnership. Next, joint venture. Okay, may mga joint venture minsan class ng mga part na nagapartner ang mga duha ka business, may mga for unlimited time, just an example, mga kontrata ng mga construction, general mga constructions. So, a certain private company, makig-merge or joint, makipag-venture sa isa ka entity pod, of course, for a certain purpose. Okay? Na sila projects, okay, na ma-encounter. So, may ginatawag ta nga exempt joint ventures, okay? From the term exempt joint ventures, so, special law rapod na ang naka-indicate ana kung unsa na sila. So, the law states or state or I mean tawag ani says na exempt sila na joint venture for that certain transaction. Again, of course, the taxability of the entity mura lang sa GPP or General Professional Partnership, exempt sila. But pag once na ano sa mga venturers na sa mga each company or each corporation, each venture, of course, venturer, so pag tagaan na sila og mga profits nila, sharing na nila kay nahuman na nila ilang project, na-accomplish na nila, again, that is subject to income tax. But of course, may mga joint ventures na wala man siya natagaan og special exemption by the law. Okay? So, taxable joint ventures ang tawag. It's just like this business partnership lang siya. Taxability of the entity, paano po siya tax. Okay? As a joint venture, paano po siya tax from the sales, pababa. And then, pag once na makuha ng net income after tax, sharing of profits na into the each venturer, again, subject to income tax na po. Okay? So, that's of course, the essence of the taxability of taxation of the joint venture. Okay? Again, in the co-ownership, the same. Co-ownership, but again, limited to property preservation. Wala mo sa mga ownership class. So, isa certain property, iba-iba og mga tag-iya. Okay? So, co-ownership, pwede po. Wala sa likutan. Isa po, napamana lang sa ilahan, ginikanan sa ilahan ang property. That certain property, wala na klaro kay kinsa gid ihatag. Again, pero mga anak sila, mga compulsory heirs ang tawag, mga immediate family. Again, that is so-called a ownership. Kamutan ng tag-iya. Okay? So, that is already limited to, it is limited to property preservation or income collection. Okay? So, ano lang, limited lang. So, mga income lang, mga income na sa pag iparentahan nyo lang or to preserve lang, okay? So may mga ano mo diya, mga para income sa pag iparentahan pero para for preservation, preserve lang ang inyong property, just like sa mga lupa. Of course, for the taxability of that entity, the ownership entity, of course, wala say tax. But on the sharing na, kung sa may mga profits na, okay, in short, nagkaroon ng excess, okay, to the for the preservation of that certain property, may mga excess ng amount, tapos i-release ninyo as share of profits, naka-income ng mga co-owners subject to tax na siya or income tax. Again, if ever na ang inyong co-ownership property or co-owned property, reinvest the income to other income-producing properties, okay, or ventures considered as unregistered partnership pa yun. So, example, nagka-income, ipasa ng income, wala nyo gi-share of profits, but i-invest niyo for the other, okay, on the other mga income producing properties para maka-income na po ito. So, doble-doble ang income, of course, taxable na siya. Okay? You are taxable as unregistered partnership. Kaya actually, class, there's no registration for co-ownership. Okay? So, pag once na ang ownership niya, mura na siya, ng income na ka, ng warta na ang ownership, ang tawag sa inyo is partnership na. But, unregistered. Kaya ang legal na partnership class, of course, you must apply with the articles of partnership in the Securities and Exchange Commission. So ang ownership wala na siya, no application na siya. So ang ownership man gud murag tagaan lang ina sa law ata na to class. Gina-allow ang co-ownership up to 10 years lang. So if ever after the 10 years, so dapat it's either ipa-register na lang ninyo as partnership or mabuwag o magbahin-bahin na mo sa inyong co-owned property. Bahin-bahinon na lang yun ninyo. So mao na siya ang stated by the law. So correct me if I'm wrong na kung na-listan ba ang term or ang years of co-ownership. I think may limit yun siya. Co-ownership 10 years ang pagkapalo. After 10 years, if ever wala pa mo ka-decide kung sa inyong plano, pwede na mo matawag as partnership. Taksa na mo as partnership. But unregistered partnership siya ang tawag. So BIR na ang mugukod sa inyo and then isumbong mo sa Securities and Exchange Commission. So, pili na mo. So, decide na mo whether magpa-register mo as partnership or bahin-bahino na lang yun ninyo ang co-owned property. In short, walay forever sa co-ownership. Okay? So, next, again, pag once na may share of profits na po na ginareceive, basta once may sharing of profits na automatic na taxable yun na siya. In short, pag ang individual man yun ang makadawat, co-owners, okay, partners or venturer, so dapat taxan sila o sila. Okay, ang mga makareceive on that certain amount. Okay? Okay, again, for the general rules in income taxation, individual taxpayers, they are under with that would be the resident citizen, non-resident citizen, resident alien, non-resident alien. Okay, NRA. So may mga acronym na kung nagipambutang. So kindly familiarize with that. RC, NRC, RA, NRA. So common na sa class. Encounter na ito na later sa mga problems. Mas dali sa sabtod kung nga na yung pag-intindi. Okay, or pagbasa. Next, corporate taxpayers, domestic, under with them would be domestic corporation. Class, take note under the domestic corporation, under na diya ang mga partnerships. Okay, mga partnership, joint ventures, basta once na here in the Philippines siya um, gi-initiate or gi-enact or tawag nato gi-register. Okay? So next, resident foreign RFC, resident foreign corporation, and RFC, non-resident foreign corporation. But again, the non-resident alien under with that natay ETB o NRA NATB. So engage and not engage to trade or business. Okay? So take note, kita ninyo class, ano lang, dali lang katimanan. Okay? So taxable siya. Okay? Taxable siya up to the extent of the income within and income without. Pag may tag without, of course, outside the Philippines. Okay? Pag resident citizen siya, as what I've said, income nimo all over the world is taxable here in the Philippines. Okay? But again, if NRC ka, non-resident citizen, income outside the Philippines, wala kay tax. Okay? So may tax lang here in the Philippines. So mapansin niyo ma-recall na ninyo tong 183 days. 183 days ka matawag kay napay 3 days basi di ay magbago imong isip 180 days 180 days. So dapat matawag sa kung ang foreigner mo ato di sa Philippines 180 days ano na siya resident alien na siya, non-resident alien na siya, not engaged or engaged in trade or business na siya. So mas mayo gid ning ano di ay na lang uh, ika 181st day or 181 days na ko uli na ko Pilipinas. Okay? Or 183 days yun ko para non-resident citizen ako. So non-taxable na akong income sa gawas. So mga generally na mga OFWs. Okay? So next, resident alien, taxable again from the income here in the Philippines. So take note lang, pag resident citizen lang yun. Citizen ka na, resident ka pa, automatic income abroad and income here in the Philippines are taxable. Other than that, income here in the Philippines lang ang magkakaroon og tax. Okay? Sir, corporate taxpayers, the same. Pag domestic, in short, pag domestic magod class, resident citizen at sa corporation, taxable siya here in the Philippines and outside the Philippines. Other than that, non-taxable ang mga outside the Philippines. And ang here in the Philippines lang ang taxable. Okay? So, I think that would be the last topic for now, and we will continue that on the next session. Okay? Thank you for listening. Again, any questions will be catered later after all the discussions or the topics will be discussed. Thank you.